Good morning. Please join in our gathering hymn, I'm Going to Live So God Can Use Me. Welcome everyone to worship here at First Unitarian in Portland, Oregon. Our mission here is to nurture the individual spirit and together work toward the beloved community. And speaking of community, everyone is invited to join their fellow congregants for a virtual social hour at 11:30. At the end of the service, you'll see a QR code as well as a tiny URL code that you can use to join. If you are new to First Unitarian, I suggest you join Reverend Tom Disrud this afternoon for an introduction to the church. Learn about Unitarian Universalism, its history and theology, learn about this particular church and its history, learn about becoming a member and deepening your involvement. The class will be this afternoon at 1 p.m., and you can find a link on a slide after the service or at firstunitarianportland.org/registration. And remember to register for the 8th Principal Workshop next Saturday. We'll be dealing with our identity as an anti-racist congregation. It's an important event, and information about that is at the website. It is also my pleasure to say a few words about our guest preacher this morning. Reverend Kathleen Owens has served the First UU Church of San Diego since 2007, first as its associate minister and since 2013 as lead minister there. The San Diego Church, like First Unitarian, is another large UU congregation and a downtown cathedral church. But their ministry has included a second campus near the Mexican border with bilingual worship for almost 10 years now. Kathleen is a good friend, and though she and I had promised to preach in each other's pulpits in person this fall, I am so pleased that she can bring us a message today, at least virtually. This morning, we also have a short message from Mindy Clark, the moderator of our Board of Trustees, as we begin our year together.
Good morning. My name is Mindy Clark, and I'm serving as the moderator of the Board of Trustees this year. My fellow trustees are Alan Combs, Cindy Comfer, Ryan Dybert, Theo Harper, Caitlin Hill, Adam House, Marilyn Mays, Barbara Morrison, Brad Taylor, Andy Wilson, Lila Rathall, and Kathy Ludlow continues to serve as moderator emerita. The board has identified several areas of focus this year. We will be continuing to look at the needs and possibilities in our buildings and property. We'll be engaging in the conversation around the 8th principle and what it means to be an anti-racist congregation. And it's time for the congregation to develop new 5-year goals for the church. The board began that conversation in its retreat, and we'll be talking with all of you across the congregation this year to hear what you think about what the church's future is. I will end by saying that the board will continue to meet via Zoom this year. Board meetings are open to congregants to observe or to share comments, and I hope we'll see you at a board meeting. Thank you.
The Board of Trustees are congregants who are elected to help hold the ministry of this large and vital congregation. There's a more formal piece of language, of course. We call our system collaborative governance. But these leaders make their love for this congregation manifest by their service and their caring. I hope you will hold them in your hearts and in your care. What they do is not easy work, especially in this challenging year. So thank them when you see them, even if it's only on a Zoom screen. Offer them your blessing as we bless their leadership collectively today. What they do is for you, and it is for us, and it is for the mission of this church, and we are blessed by their gifts of service. I'm going to light our chalice here on the chancel now. I invite you to light a chalice or a candle, if you have one, wherever you may be this morning. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
A heart full of love, a heart full of song. I'm doing everything all wrong. Oh God, for shame, I do not even know your name. Dear Mademoiselle, I am lost in your spell. Are foolish, but they're true. Cosette, Cosette, or were we dreaming when we met? Who can say? Who can tell? I saw you waiting, and I knew. At your feet, at your call, and it isn't a dream, not a dream. After all.
May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and of service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Let us open our minds and hearts in this community of the Spirit, offer prayers, for the healing of pain, find strength for the days ahead, and listen for the soft, gentle coming of love. Come now, and let us worship. I invite you to join in singing our hymn, I Know This Rose Will Open. Our responsive reading this morning is entitled To Face the Truth by Reverend Stephen Kendrick. We are here to face the truth about ourselves, about this faith we love, and the ways it presently serves others and the world, as well as to open ourselves to ways it can better and more joyfully reflect our potential and core values. We want to know the ways we are bound to one another, as well as to larger religious movements, normally beyond our sight and vision. We say we are open and diverse, yet it is too easy to feel stuck in old paths and stubborn habits, reflecting not so much tradition as our comfort. We want to answer the call to service, to a world that needs our message, our hope, our revived energy. We are gathered to learn, to unlearn, to hear, and to move forward. Amen. Please join now in singing our doxology, Spirit of Life.
friends and fellow members of First Unitarian. We're the Dybert Juntanen family.
I'm Eiley.
I'm Will.
And I'm Lorelei.
And I'm Ryan. And in this season of homecoming, when we would normally be looking forward to returning to the church with all of you, we miss you. But one of the upsides of this time is that we're learning to find church in so many places. Because
sometimes church looks like this.
Sometimes church looks like this. Sometimes church looks like this.
Or like this.
I know that your hope's been missing. I know we both could have almost died. I know it's harder every day to provide.
And of course, lately, church looks a lot like this. Or this.
In these uncertain times, remember the words of James Baldwin.
In this time of homecoming and season of giving, we are proud to continue our financial support of First Church because
It helps us support youth programs like Why Are You You and OWL, and a religious education program.
and our music and worship program.
and our witness for social justice. We're so looking forward to being together with all of you again very soon. As you're able, we hope that you can give generously and joyfully to support this church, First Church, that helps so many of us find church all around us.
As I promised, I want to let you know how our fundraising is going. We've taken big strides on our path forward, and it's very gratifying. We began last week with 66% of our goal already promised, and this week, as of Friday, we've reached 70% of the goal. I want you to remember what we are asking of all of us. If you and your family are struggling this year, give, if you can, what you can. If you're doing okay, stay steady in your gift to the church. Make it the same as last year. And if you haven't been impacted, if you're doing just fine, thank you, consider stepping up. We need to cover for those members who are not able to give this year or just have to cut back. We need to cover for one another. And don't wait. We clearly still have a ways to go, and there are just 2 more weeks in this effort. So make your decision and get that pledge card in the mail or pledge right at the website, which for many of us is the easiest, or call the office and just let us know. However you want to do it, please get it done. We are so grateful for your generosity and for your support. Each week, we take an offering in this congregation to support organizations outside of our own church who are in concert with our own mission. The Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ashland, Oregon, has a membership of just under 150 adults. In the most recent fires, 8 families with over 20 of those adults lost their homes and all of their belongings. 2 other member families had total losses in their immediate family circle. This morning, we will share our offering with that congregation so that those families can receive help and support from their faith. Please give generously as you are able. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Each week we take time to name the joys and concerns of members of this community. If you have a joy or concern that you would like to have shared in worship, let us know by writing to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. You can also leave a request for prayer. Those prayer requests are held by our ministers and lay ministers through the week. You can request a prayer at prayer@firstunitarianportland.org as well. Member Jack Kaiser died on Tuesday at the age of 94. Jack and his wife, Judy Davis, joined the church in 1994. We hold Judy and their whole family at this time of loss. I also want to invite you to share a moment of remembrance of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died this weekend. The notorious RBG, the small woman who reshaped the meaning of justice in this nation. We hold her memory and her family as they grieve her death. We also visit in our own hearts the way her life touched ours. Her brilliant mind that brought legal equality for women into being. Her clarion voice that protected values we hold dear. Her faithful voice in dissent. We are so grateful and so blessed by her life and work. And we relied on her to help preserve the modest justice that we have thus far managed to create. And her death leaves us grieving, but also fearful. The days ahead hold so many dangers. So much is fluid. So much is at risk. Recognizing all of that, will you join me now in a time of prayer? Spirit of life, power of love, love that can cast out fear. These days require faith. The challenges have come in rapid succession. The virus that brought 200,000 deaths thus far. The economic downturn. Then the wildfires. And all the while, the unabated fires of injustice. And now we also need to mourn one particular death of a person on whom we had come to rely. These days require faith because the challenges have not ended. They are not over. Spirit, help us reach deep. Help us know the truth of our connection to one another and the truth of your movement within us, Great Spirit. Help us discover that love truly is stronger than hate, that love can overcome fear. Help us have faith that we can do more than we imagine, and that together, what we can do will make a space where love can live. Most Great Spirit, whom we know by many names and no name at all, come unto us as we sang. Be with us. The days ahead will hold more tests. Of that we can be certain. Help us stay clear. Help us stay strong. Help us stay true so that together we can come through. Help us find a way, even out of no way. May that be so. And amen. Let's spend a moment together now in silence, in memory of all we have lost and in the hope that still stirs within us.
Our first reading this morning is titled, We Hold Hope Close, and was written by Reverend Teresa Soto from the meditation manual, Spilling the Light. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a north star, and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and movement, the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. Our second reading is titled, I Pray This Day for the Courage to Be, by Maureen Killeran from the meditation manual, To Wake to Rise. I pray this day for the courage to be, the courage to be humble in the face of inequity and pain, to know the power has been given me to make a difference, although not to end all suffering or to save all the whales that populate our days. I pray for the courage of endurance, to keep acting in the midst of despair, to keep trying in the aftermath of failure, to keep hoping in the emptiness that follows loss or change. May courage give me patience, and may I ever know love's healing presence at the heart and the center of my days.
Sold I to the merchant ships, minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. All I ever had, redemption songs. These songs of freedom, songs of freedom.
I want to thank Bill for inviting me to speak this morning. It is a real honor, and thank you. Of course, you know we are living in dangerous times, and you here in this beautiful state, here in Portland, you know firsthand of the danger, the wildfires and the smoke, the long-term drought that provided so much kindling, the fear of evacuations in this time of the novel coronavirus, and all of this alongside the other pandemic of institutional white supremacy and racism that is a real danger and threat to people's lives, especially Black lives, Indigenous people's lives, people of color, and non-people of color who are accomplices in the work of racial justice. And another danger every person in this country, regardless of political persuasion, is facing, and the uncertainty is the uncertainty of fair and free elections and the preservation of our democracy. All of this can create such fear, fill our hearts with such dread. All of this can cause us to turn inward, to shut down and cut ourselves off from other people and the world. It's understandable. And for some of us, we may need to do this from time to time, to recommit ourselves to spiritual practices that bring healing, that puts us in touch with the gratitude we have for the blessings in our lives. And sometimes we need to have a time out for rest, to find some peace. In my early days in this faith, the Reverend Bill Hamilton Hallway would often offer a blessing toward the end of the service. He would say, in part, "If I were to wish you peace, it would be peace to rest, to reflect, and to make ready for the coming day." I appreciated the reminder and the permission for rest, but it was rest toward a purpose, to make ready, because this faith calls us into action. Not all of us doing the same thing at the same time, but we are called in many ways to do the actions that we can do. so that we all might have an abundant life in the midst of the whole painful and beautiful shared reality in which we live. And in living this, it requires real courage. We have ancestors in this faith that exhibited such courage, that chose the difficult path of living lives of value, living them out loud and proclaiming that good news. We have leaders today who question and struggle and demand that we become who we say we are, that we do the work of love for ourselves, our neighbors, for this faith and this country. Living this faith, our values and our principles into daily practice is a way of creating an abundant life of meaning, purpose, and joy. An abundant life is possible when truth is told. One of our principles speaks directly to this, that we promote and affirm the responsible search for truth and meaning. And if we are paying attention, we can hear truth daily. One of the things that I appreciate about the Poor People's Campaign for a Moral Revival, led by the Reverend Dr. William Barber and Reverend Liz Theo-Harris, is the truth they hold up when they challenge us that if we want to change the narrative, we have to change the narrators. Changing the narrators to hear more truth expands and enriches everyone. The peaceful protests that have happened in this city and around our country are telling the truth. When we hear people's truth, allow ourselves to take it in, transformation can happen. Truth-telling and the ability to hear it and act on that truth requires courage. It is a place to begin if change is going to come. And how we are in need of change. As individuals, we are in need of transition and change from despair to hope, from apathy to engagement, from feelings of passive helplessness to active, emboldened action. And as we make these transitions within ourselves, our nation, too, can experience its own desperately needed transition. A transition from a federal, self-serving, power-abusing, freedom-denying administration to one that upholds, enhances, and ensures freedom and liberty for every person living in this country. And it requires our active engagement to ensure that happens. Transitions are possible when we create community and keep ourselves and our congregations open to all who are longing for a healing faith. When we do the deep work of radical welcome that our transgendered leaders through the Transforming Hearts collectives are calling us to do. The spiritual growth that we nurture in our small groups and our worship services help us treat members and friends of the congregation and the larger community with respect, with humility, and generous actions toward one another. The spiritual growth that we nurture also inspires and empowers us to act on our values to help heal the world. Courageous transitions do not happen solely on the actions of one individual. Rather, transition and courageous change are the results of numerous people in a variety of roles doing their part to bring about the change we need. For the national change we need, we must find encouragement and empowerment in our fifth principle that says we affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The right of conscience is the result of the fourth principle, that responsible search for truth. When we are doing the work of the fourth principle, then the fifth can come into view. The theologies within Unitarian Universalism locates healing and wholeness in relationship with one another and with the earth. Our own 2019 Statement of Conscience, titled Our Democracy Uncorrupted, can act as a guide. It states that we, as people of faith, locate hope for addressing social problems in being open to diverse perspectives and building connections. And we are learning to understand more deeply the truth of our universalism that says we have commitments beyond our congregations. Excluding our neighbors' voices impoverishes our souls. Hearing all expands our spirits. Our faith calls us into living the requirements. It calls us to live into the requirements of real democracy. There is much more in this statement. I hope you'll go to the UUA's website to read it more fully. What is needed to live into the requirements of a real democracy? This has become a haunting question for me. By the time I took some time off back in August, I have to admit I was bone weary, struggling with real doubt about our government, about our country and the crises we face. I needed some rest and a break, and I acknowledged the real privilege of having a vocation, which means I can still work mostly from home, and that this vocation offers benefits like paid time off. This is a blessing for which I am grateful. And in that time off, with no email or meetings, I read and rested, took long walks with my wife, and one day even allowed myself to randomly watch some episodes of Star Trek. One of the episodes I watched from Deep Space Nine was about an unknown virus attacking the crew. Tried to get away from reality. The other episode I watched from The Next Generation was an episode focused on made-up conspiracies that promoted fear and suspicion, and that had the power of the state coming down to incarcerate one person on unproven charges. Now, because it was Star Trek, a cure for the virus was found by the end of the episode. The only remedy in the other episode, said the captain, the only remedy to corrupt power and tyranny is vigilance. Timothy Snyder's important book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, reminds us in many ways that vigilance is crucial for a democracy to thrive. He defines tyranny as the usurpation of power by a single individual or group, or the circumvention of law by rulers for their own benefit. Vigilance to what is happening makes a difference, and sometimes can create space for change and transformation. And what I appreciate about this book is the encouragement and sense of empowerment I experienced while reading it. There are multiple ways to remain vigilant and create courageous space for change. We've seen this already through the leadership of the multiple peaceful protests of Black Lives Matter, and the impact that those protests have had on various cities and states as they enter into deep conversation about reallocating funds and what does public safety really mean. We've also seen vigilance at work when people became aware of and raised their voices and protested the changes being forced on the United States Postal Service. When the clamor became too loud, questionable changes were halted and investigations were opened. Snyder writes, "Life is political, not because the world cares about how you feel, but because the world reacts to what you do. The minor choices we make are themselves a kind of vote, making it more or less likely that free and fair elections will be held in the future. In the politics of the everyday, our words and our gestures, or their absence, count very much." Mr. Snyder also wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post not that long ago about what we as a country should be learning from Belarus. And I think it's an instructive article for possible future action in this country. We have seen in the news how courageous citizens of that country, after decades of autocratic rule, protested the latest rigged election and are making their voices heard and hopefully creating space by their courageous action. He writes, "Belarusians teach us what I would call the 6 Ps of defending an electoral victory against authoritarian chaos: preparation, predominance, protest, peace, persistence, and pluralism. Preparation means understanding that your local authoritarian will spoil the election and planning in advance. Predominance means getting out the vote and winning by a wide margin so everyone will know that the authoritarian is lying about the results. Protest means taking to the streets when the authoritarian makes their move. Peace means keeping demonstrations non-violent as the regime discredits itself with violence. Persistence means coming back anyway the next day and the day after that. And pluralism is a summons to a large diversity of groups to be involved, like workers and doctors and women and more. Democracy," he writes, "is a value, so it must be valued. Democracy is a practice, and so it must be practiced. If we want it, we have to open ourselves to learning from others and then be prepared to take responsibility for ourselves." I know, given the current pandemic, health pandemic, many of us can't be in the streets, but your voice can still be heard in many ways, and we must do everything we can to turn out the vote. Maybe if you're on the younger, healthier end of the spectrum, you might become a poll worker. You can get trained, wear a mask, keep social distance, and keep polls open and accessible. Being a poll worker is nonpartisan, and training is available. And this is one way to go from being passive to active. Another way to transition from isolation to connection and engagement is to join with community partners, get educated about the issues on the ballot. Again, not partisan work, but rather actively participating in our own governance. So what is a courageous act that you can do? What truth do you need to tell? What truth do you need to hear? What principle is getting you excited or challenging you to live it more fully? One of our church members, Wilda Jones Schaefer, was a powerful example of taking this faith and its principles, and especially the fifth, quite seriously in her daily life. She was passionate, and she, in her years of retirement before she died, every Friday morning would call her elected officials at the local, state, and national level. She would call them and discuss a variety of issues with staff who answered the phone. She built relationships with them and expressed her views based on our UU values for the change that we need. She was so vigilant with her phone calls that those staffers, when they picked up the phone and heard the person say hello, they knew it was her. They respected Wilda and her knowledge. They respected her commitment and vigilance of the work. She treated them with care, built relationships, and made a difference. Courage and change are needed, and we, through vigilance and practice, can each do our part to bring about the change and live into the creation of real democracy, doing the work of love. May it be so. Blessed be. I'd like to invite you now into a moment, a time of prayer and meditation. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, there is so much that we need right now. And even in our neediness, we are grateful that we can be present to this moment, that we have blessings and gifts that can be used for the common good. Because we have been together in this shared space, hearing these words, hearing the music, because we have experienced this, may we gather strength and ready ourselves for the coming day. May we reach out. May we find courage to do that next right thing, that next right step in following love's call, in following the call for justice. May we use our gifts wisely and be the change we need. Amen.
I invite you now to join in singing our final hymn, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. May we ready ourselves for the coming days, for all that lies ahead, May we bring a vigilance to our living, born not of distrust, but grounded in love and care, so that the change we bring can point toward the change we seek. Help us be the change as we answer the call of love. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.